Again, thank you for joining Civilnet. Today, my guest is Anthony Portantino, Democratic candidate for the California Senate, a former California State Assembly member. Welcome to Armenia.
Thank you, Rabina. It's wonderful to be here.
What brings you here?
Well, I've wanted to come for years. Obviously, in the part of California that I used to represent and then hope to represent, there's a large Armenian American community, very thriving, very active, both in politics, in government, in civil discourse. And so I've always wanted to come to see and experience for myself Yerevan and Armenia. And having just gone through a campaign and an election, and during that same time period, Artsakh and the issues there were very important to the community in Glendale in California. I felt it appropriate to come to see for myself and learn more about the conversations that happen in California and how relevant they are. And so that's why I'm here.
And what are the differences you're observing? Because to see Armenia from the perspective of the Armenian diaspora and to be here should be quite different.
Well, you know, obviously the communities are different in a sense that this is a metropolitan city, but the aspirations, the heart and the soul of the communities are very similar. I think just the geographies might be different, but you know, a community in California cares about peace, they care about sovereignty, they care about good government, they care about many of the same things, but there's obviously another very, very powerful presence is a love for the homeland, is an appreciation for Yerevan. I mean, I was in a shop last week and I was talking to the young woman and I said, guess where I'm going next week? And she said, please say hello to my Yerevan, give it a kiss from me. So there is a strong connection. Not everyone in the community is a diasporan Armenian as well. I mean, there's many, many Hayastansi in the community, and being non-Armenian, when I meet somebody, I don't necessarily know whether they're from Armenia
or the older diaspora.
Right. So every conversation and every experience I learn something else, and so being here, I'm going to learn even more.
Mr. Portantino, I see your connection with the Armenian community is not new. You're a member of the American Armenian Chamber of Commerce. You're also on the Pasadena Armenian Genocide Commemoration Committee. So how did it start? How did this connection start?
Well, one of the interesting things is growing up in New Jersey, which is 3,000 miles away from California, there was a large Armenian American community in New Jersey as well. And so I remember my mother, as I was growing up, talked about Woodrow Wilson, talked about the Armenian genocide. And I think it had to do with the connection of Woodrow Wilson because he was from New Jersey as well. And so when I came to California, some of the first friends and friendships that I developed were Armenian Americans. And interestingly, some of them actually were from the East Coast as well. And our friend Ardashus Kasakian, who's also running for state assembly in California, he's from Boston. And so it was a natural connection. I don't know, very similar cultures. A
connection that was based on friendships that extended over to committees and
right. And
assemblies.
And the Armenian community said welcome. They were very welcoming to me. And so I was asked to be on the Genocide Memorial Committee. I'm the only non-Armenian on the committee, and I was asked to be on the Chamber of Commerce. And there's an old saying that if you care about something and people ask you to help, you say yes, right? And so it's an honor to me to have those relationships where the community is comfortable enough to ask.
And the role of all these assemblies and unions in America, in the American Armenian community, what role do they have in preserving, or what role do they have in general American policymaking?
Well, there's a lot of influence. There's a lot of presence. Again, my district has the largest Armenian community in California, which is the largest Armenian community outside of Armenia. So it's a very, very strong influence on development, on art, on culture, food, and then also, of course, politics. You know, we know our friend Zadeh Sinanian was the mayor of Glendale. Ara Najarian was just the recent mayor of Glendale. Ardashis Kasakian is running for the state assembly. Paul Krikorian is a council member in the city of Los Angeles. Kacho Achajian just ran for Congress after, you know, he's leaving the assembly next year. So there's been a long legacy of Armenian American involvement in politics on the state and the local level. Our friend Jack Hajinian was the mayor of Montebello recently. And
is there a change that the new generation of Armenian state officials in the United States have more potential or have adopted a different approach generally?
I think there's two things that are going on. I think public service is definitely an increase. You see more young people wanting to get involved, not necessarily to be the politician, but to be the policy expert, to be the staff member, to be the political person. So I think young people in general are getting more involved and more excited about public service. And so one of the exciting things about running a campaign is every day there's 5 new 20-year-olds that want to be involved. And you know, some of them are very good, some of them are very smart, some of them find out, well, I don't really like this, but other ones find out I really get excited about this. And you know, one of the things that I did when I was in the assembly, I let my interns sit in on all of our policy bill discussions. And so one of the bills that I authored was a suggestion from an intern who had seen a documentary on an issue and felt very passionate, and during our discussion brought that to the conversation, and then we changed California law based on a suggestion of an intern. So I think that's also important. Mentorship is important.
And which brings me to my next question, your value-based leadership program.
Right.
Well, could you tell us more about it?
When I left the assembly, University of Southern California asked me to be a visiting fellow in the Institute of Politics. And one of the things that I'm trying to do is, you know, we're honored to represent. It doesn't mean that we're any more special or any different than anybody else. We get the honor of being a representative. So what we do is important, or not. The work is important, the individual isn't. And so what I look at people and I look at the discourse, we should not have politics of convenience and policies that we necessarily don't believe in. So
is this a trend generally seen in politicians?
Well, I'm hopeful that it's a trend that can be contagious, that we should know what we care about and what our own values are, and then we should go out and lead based on those values. And so that's what the curriculum that I developed at USC is, to help young people understand what they believe in. And they, you know, somebody comes up to me and they say, I want to be a politician. I go, why? Well, I said, until you can answer the question in a concise way of why you want to do it, based on a value, you shouldn't do it.
Is this something that's generally, as a trend, taking the place of the ideology that was driving people towards politics to begin with?
Well, ideology is important because, again, it goes to a belief system. And so I'm okay with somebody being, you know, having a strong opinion, but it should be based on one's own beliefs. It shouldn't be, I adopted an ideology because it's expedient or because I think it's the right ideology. You should make it your own. It's what you believe in as an individual. Because when you get up and you give, what I've learned is when you get up and you give a speech or you give a presentation, when you talk about something you care about, you present it better. You're talking about something where you don't necessarily relate to or care about. And many of the bills and issues that I promote and I push are about things that matter to me as I grew up, or things that I learned about that I felt were important. And so I think that just makes you better at this.
So from this perspective, what's your evaluation of Armenia's internal political system
well, I'm
or
learning,
demeanor?
I'm learning a lot. I understand that some of the structures have been changed with the majority party and the opposition party and democracy and who can vote for whom. I tend to come down on the side of, we should be able to vote for whom we want to vote for, and we should be able to choose who we want to choose based on our connection to the individuals. If you don't necessarily agree with the party, but you like the person, you should be able to make those decisions. So as a geopolitical philosophy, democracy is something to be valued, and things that maybe pare back on democracy aren't always the best.
And going back to America, and a subject we cannot avoid, the upcoming presidential elections, the candidates, and their possible policy towards Armenian genocide recognition. What's your take on predictions at this point?
Well, I'm proud that California recognizes the genocide. I'm proud that California has always, for as long as I can remember, done the right thing. And one of the points that I make about California is we have to speak even louder, and we have to influence Washington to do the right thing. I mean, like everyone else, I was very disappointed in President Obama for not following through on his campaign promises. And I believe that Hillary Clinton is going to win the presidential election. I think Donald Trump is anything but a good candidate for a myriad of reasons. I mean, I think he's a cartoon character more than a real character, and would be an embarrassment to our country if he were to become president. And I think Americans are seeing that. Everybody says he's divisive. I say no, he's a uniter, because he's uniting 80% of the people to oppose him. And so I hope, as we've said before, you have to be optimistic, you have to believe, but you also have to speak with a loud voice.
But there aren't so many traces of this happening in Clinton's campaign.
Right. No,
I'm not even talking about...
she's avoided the issue. I mean,
yes.
she totally has avoided the issue, and I think we have to make sure that she doesn't get to do that. I think we, our congressional representatives, and I know Adam Schiff from California,
he's been outspoken.
He's been very outspoken, and a big leader. Frank Pallone from New Jersey also has been a strong voice, and I think that's where California plays a role, is we have to be much more vigilant and say, wait a minute, this is important.
Well, is Hillary Clinton really avoiding the issue, or she doesn't want to make promises that she's not going to keep, as has been the case so many times before her?
That's a good question. That's a good question. I don't know. I really don't.
Which basically rules out any optimism on that front.
And perhaps I was being cynical in assuming she was avoiding it, and maybe you're being more honest and pragmatic and saying, and that's a good question. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if she's being a politician or she's being cautious. But it's one or the other,
And in your opinion and in your practice, and can the Armenian community be more active in pushing through the Armenian genocide recognition in America? Are there angles that we haven't considered, or actions that we could be taking and we haven't?
I think, to be frank, the Armenian community has done a very good job. I mean, state by state, and even on the local level. Recently, there was a town in California that was going to build a memorial to a Turkish leader, and the Armenian community rallied and started a recall against the local government officials. And I think the Armenian community, in particular in California, is very, very active. And California, obviously, every year commemorates the genocide. And again, in my small town, Pasadena, we built a beautiful memorial. And there was some pushback. There were some people that, you're going to find in any community, were opposed to it. But the city voted unanimously to support it, gave the space in the park, and the community has raised the money. So, I think the movement is strong. I think it's Washington that's the problem. It's not the advocacy on the ground. But we need to elect more people from around the country that say this is important, because the president and the national security people are not going to do it on their own. There's an old saying that the role of the activist is to make the government better. And so again, for myself, I never shy away from the conversation because you get better from it. And when I was in the California legislature, there was 120 of us. There was only one that had their home telephone number on the state's website. And my friends would say, what do you say when people call you? And I'd say, hello.
Would you get a lot of calls?
I get a lot of calls from people who didn't believe I was really my number. They were calling just to check.
Test calls.
I got test calls. But I also run into a lot of people on the street who say, I have your home number. It makes people more comfortable to talk to me, knowing that I've put my home number. So that's another one of my political theories, is I want to break down the barrier between the representative and the people we represent. There's too much discomfort and disconnect. And I always say, if you're in a restaurant and you see me, you'll come over and say hello. If you see another politician, you might point out to your friend, oh, there's so-and-so. But I want people to feel comfortable, and by advertising and giving out my home telephone number, people say, well, I got his home telephone number, I can go talk to him.
Well, you've been recognized already 3 times in Yerevan in a couple of days. How does that feel?
My mother used to say, the day you think you're important, you're not. So it's nice, but as I said, what we do is important. We're not important.
Thank you for being here today, and good luck with your endeavors. And we thank the viewers for joining us as well.